I do believe we've just gone live, and so we will give it 1 or 2 minutes for friends to start jumping on. Our little eye has come on. We'll let this syndicate to a few platforms. Good to see you, Robert, anyway, before we officially start.
It's always my pleasure and honor. Yeah.
So whereabouts are you now, Robert?
Well, I'm quarantined in California, so that's where most Californians are. It's difficult getting out and it's difficult getting in, but maybe things will change. Who knows?
Well, I think things are going to change a lot sooner than we imagine. I've been observing for best part of 30 years of my life. I've been made a particular science or art of just observing what I call the geometry of now. And I've just seen how things generally play out in accordance with certain mathematical formulae and principles. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I'm passionate about Mandelbrot mathematics, M-set mathematics, the mathematical fractality. And it's almost as though one could walk out of one's door in the morning and plot relationships, circumstances, events according to mathematical formulae, and actually plot the path of least resistance to the highest outcome. I'm certain of it now because I've run so many simulation games in my brain. Anyway, so basically it's become second nature to me now after 30 years of doing that I am certain in my mind that we're going to see this COVID pantomime disappear as quickly as it emerged. Almost a year, one full sun cycle. It all kicked off really in March of last year. So I've got this sense, deep, abiding sense that end of March into April is going to see this thing just disappear as though it never happened. It was just a bad dream dreamt up by some Disney producer who had too much acid the night before, that kind of thing.
You mean he was from the 60s dropping acid? Is that what you're telling me?
And he was also the guy who wrote the script for Biden's inauguration, just so you know.
Well, I thought it wasn't a pantomime. I thought it was a masquerade party. So
yeah. Well, no, you're right. Pantomime in as much as it was bloody good entertainment. The slapstick. It was bloody good slapstick entertainment in the old British tradition where we used to throw fruit on the stage. So Lady Gaga clumping down those stairs in her Hunger Games frou-frou ball gown and warbling, the high point of her career, and then fucking up the last note. It was perfect. It was wonderful. Anyway, we've got a few hundred people have joined us, I can see, and the numbers are going up. Thank you, friends, tribe, beloved audience. I'm addressing the audience now, not the venerable Dr. Robert Young. Audience, please, friends, I've been completely caned on social media. Robert Young is one of the most targeted medical scientists in the history of the modern world. We're both persona non grata in the mainframe. So please, relying on you, friends, to share this link now in the next 2 minutes. I beg you, share it on your Facebook or on your Twitters and Witters, just to try and get as much traffic as possible. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because this is a rarity to get this man and to be able to peck at his brain for an hour, over an hour. We've got to run over an hour today, almost certainly, is a real rare honor. And I'm going to let you come in, audience, and ask questions as well. If any of you wanted to know what a germ is, what disease is, what a vaccination is, simple. What is blood? Why is it so important? These are what's in the vaccine? Why is it the scariest existential threat in medical science history? These are the questions that I believe Dr. Robert Young can answer better than any human alive. So, and I'm not bigging him up. I've known him for a couple of years only. He's also a commissioner of the International Tribunal for Natural Justice's Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Weaponization of the Biosphere, along with G. Edward Griffin, Del Bigtree, and some other great and good venerable names. Thank you. I can see the numbers cranking up. here with our audience. I'm going to give it another 2 minutes, and then we're going to jump in to the questions. I just don't want people to miss what we're going to be chatting about here. Robert's in California, in Los Angeles. Is it in LA or outside LA, Robert?
Yeah, somewhere like that. Yeah, I'm in LA and outside of LA, but down in Valley Center at the Rancho del Sol, which means the Ranch of the Sun, and it's like a Garden of Eden. So,
well, I've heard about it, and I very much look forward to seeing you. As soon as I can get on a plane, I'll be out in California. Definitely come and see you there. A lot of questions coming in already. Love from Australia, love from Utah, love from the UK, hello from Texas, hi from the Netherlands, love from Cape Town, hi Maresha, Massachusetts, Massachusetts, Louise, nice to see you, Perth, Australia, Canada, South Dakota, Ohio, Mickey, Minnie Ellen, my favorite alien, Louisiana, China, good Lord. Oh, Canada. Very nice. Nice, Toby. I'm going to use that. China. Okay, Texas in the house. Texas, you are so welcome. Please, God, you're wielding the 38 Smith & Wesson big boots at the same time. God knows we need our Texans now more than ever before. Greece, Libby from Greece. Tim Psycho has just said poof. I'm not sure if you're describing yourself, Tim, but if you are, step to the side. Hi from the UK, Richmond, UK, Indonesia, Paulina. Hi, Paulina. Slovenia, good God, look at this. Perth, Australia, Western Australia, Canada, Kent, UK, Oregon, USA. This is wonderful. We're getting a real Argentina. Hi, Sabrina, Argentina. Whoever you are, Norway, bless you, Lion Hansen, Sardinia, beautiful, Vermont, Liverpool, UK. Hey, salt of the earth, Helen. Love you, peeps. The last time I was in Liverpool, I was on tour with my band, we were touring with Yngwie Malmsteen, the great shredding heavy metal guitar legend. And it happened. Honestly, it happened. He came out on the stage. And they had all these little kids in wheelchairs. I say all, 3 or 4 kids in wheelchairs who'd been given special dispensation on the side of this. I shouldn't be laughing. And they had the wheelchair kids on the side of the stage. And Yngwie Malmsteen launched into this amazing guitar solo. And there was this one kid in particular who was right at the front because he was obviously very infirm, very impaired, very deformed, God bless him. And Yngwie did this amazing solo for this kid, came up to the wheelchair. Kid, you could see him just lighting up. And then Yngwie went across the other side of the stage. And as they reached the crescendo at the end of this piece, he grabbed his plectrum and flicked it at the kid, which you normally do as a guitarist. But he got the kid in the eye. Anyway, it was terrible. So that was my last memory of Liverpool, was seeing a poor infirm kid in a wheelchair get a plectrum in the eye while we were on stage. In any event, we've got about 40 countries from what I can see so far, 30 odd countries I can see here. So welcome. People loving you, Robert. God, I didn't know you were that famous. Okay. It's good, Robert. It's beautiful. All Israel. Maya Dunsky from Israel. Wow, so welcome, friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
600 people with us, and the numbers are jumping up. Hi, Rosemary in England. Okay, everyone's saying hi, Robert Young. Everyone's forgotten me, apparently, these days. I'm just a pundit. That's good. Look, let's jump in. Robert, let's jump in, and I'm going to be fielding questions from the audience. Before we do, I just need to tell the audience, those who don't know, I've been completely deplatformed. If you want to stay in touch with me, please just sign up at my website, sashastone.com, and sign up. And once a week, we'll ping you with my media links and it's a weekly report thing that I'm doing, which is really a trolling exercise. I'm really enjoying trolling the liberal intellectual class. And that's what my report is. But nonetheless, Robert, how can people get hold of you? Firstly, please, or look in on your work as a resource.
Well, I always love to make it available so people can have as much information as their little hearts desire. And this information should be affordable. So therefore, it's free. So what you need to do is you need to go to drrobertyoung.com. And if you want to read a scientific blog, then all you do is put a / and then blog after that.
Okay.
So it's drrobertyoung.com. And there you can read my CV. You can read, a little bit about some of the scientific publications, which are available. I only put up a few of them. There's 3,000. So I only put up like 20 that are most recent. I think one that would be very interested, that was peer reviewed and published, and that's a second thought concerning viruses, vaccines,
Great.
and the HIV/AIDS hypothesis. The reason I mention HIV/AIDS hypothesis, because that's the modern day, within our lifetime, the beginning to this masquerade of suggesting that viruses actually exist, even though they've never been isolated.
Okay.
So that's a very important point, because what has been seen what they're isolating is an isolate, which is a fraction of something of which there's no way to really identify. So you can go to that website and find out a lot of information there. And but thank you.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Robert, for that. And we'll try and make sure we put that in the comments when this gets syndicated. Okay. So many beautiful messages coming in. Thank you, folks. Can't answer you all, but just hundreds and hundreds of messages coming in. Beautiful. Costa Rica as well. Okay, good. Let's begin. All right. Almost 700 people online with us. And the numbers are jumping up, but we're going to begin now. We are 15 minutes past the hour. In Indonesia here, it's 10:15 p.m. I've got a broadcast later on with Simon Parks, Dr. Charlie Ward, Sean Stone, and Robert David Steele, with updates from Juan 07, if anyone wants to know what's what and who's who in the zoo. Okay, Dr. Robert O. Young, what are germs? Please, and this has to be stupid simple.
Okay, so I love to quote Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein said, and I quote, "If you can't explain what you're talking about simply, then you just don't know what you're talking about." Close quote. So when we talk about germs, I'm going to explain it simply. Germs are biological breakdown products. They're cell fragments. They're born out of the cell. Germs are symptoms of cellular breakdown, period. Okay? They break down just like an analogy would be when you're looking in your refrigerator and you're looking at the deterioration of your food, germs appear out of the cellular breakdown. They're not the cause of cellular breakdown, but they're the symptom of cellular breakdown. So germs cannot cause disease, but are the expression of dis-ease, which is a reflection of the environment. So very simply, we don't get old, we mold.
Very good. Very good. So a germ is an exosome, which is an excretion event, which is your own living systems, the living cells saying thank you, no thank you, out. We want you out of the system. Create a discrete package, send it out of the living system. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, an exosome is an expression from the cell as a nanoparticulate, and it's actually a repair protein. But when we're talking about, let's say, anthrax, the bacillus, anthraxis, bacillus, a bacteria, that is born out of the cell. E. coli comes out of the cell. Strep and Staphylococcus comes out of the cells. So these are symptoms of cellular breakdown that are a reflection of a compromised internal environment. So it's all about the milieu or the terrain.
Yes.
It's everything, and
Yes.
the germ is nothing. Now, I borrowed that, so that's in quotes. The germ is nothing. The terrain is everything, in quotes.
Yeah.
That was expressed over 100 years ago by Claude Bernard, and prior to him, Antoine Béchamp, the great medical doctor and scientist who was an adversary to the more, let's say, famous Louis Pasteur and his germ theory.
Right. Right.
So this debate between germs and the terrain have been going on for a very, very long time, and so I feel very connected to it.
Was there anything negative about Pasteur in the context of like Nikola Tesla versus Thomas Edison? We now know that Edison was a son of a bitch backed up by the Morgans and the usual banksters. Was there anything insidious behind the Pasteur story?
Well, I had this impression, and many years ago, this was in the 90s, I felt this strong urge to go to Paris and to go to the University of Paris Medical School library. And out of that urge, I had this suspicion that there were many writings of this great scientist that I had learned about in 1996. And what motivated me was the discovery of an anthraxis bacillus being born out of a red blood cell in 1994. And then it morphed back into a red blood cell.
Right.
So it came out and it went back as if, in different forms. So this whole etiology is based upon a word called pleomorphism. Pleo meaning many, morphism meaning forms. And so I realized that the germ theory was not a real theory. That is, by the way, it still is a theory. It was not something that foundationally was represented at the cellular level, that things were morphing, even with the corona effect, which I've studied since the 80s. The corona effect and the spiking, that's an aging process of the membrane as these spikes or these crowns come off as a symptom of just a cell going, from a healthy state to an unhealthy state.
Yes.
So with Louis Pasteur, prior to Louis Pasteur, discovering the work of Antoine Béchamp and a book which I discovered many, many years ago, and his writings, which is the culmination of his work, called The Blood, the Third Anatomical Element. And when I saw this work and his depiction by writing and also by drawing by hand, documenting what he was seeing under a light microscope, which is illuminated by a mirror from the sunlight. We're using, of course, halogen bulbs, and better optics to be able to see these things.
Yeah.
I literally broke down in tears. And the reason I broke down in tears is because I thought I was a lone voice in the wilderness. And now, by intuition, not knowing this work existed, I literally, from the dungeons of the University of Paris Medical Library, they had brought me up les microzymas, which means the small being, the small intelligent being, and seeing his drawings validated my craziness. Validated that there was somebody that preceded me that was just as crazy as I was, as it relates to what the outside world looking in saying, oh, this is craziness, and let's just ignore it because it's already been scientific proven. It's already been determined that germs cause disease, much like HIV causes AIDS, or Zika causes neurological problems.
Right.
And now the corona SARS-CoV-2, which brings back the COVID-19, is the result of the fever, the dry cough, et cetera, et cetera. So when I saw that, it validated that there was someone that preceded me and that I could stand on his shoulders.
Understood. Yeah. I know, I get that. And that must have been deeply consequential for you, moving and giving you a great deal of strength as well, presumably.
Well, it not only gave me strength, is when I had the opportunity to go to Louis Pasteur's laboratory, his original lab, and to be able to look at his diaries and read the conclusion that he was coming to, I realized that Béchamp, in his writings to the press and begging, please understand that the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything, and that Pasteur is a fraud, and that the evidence of his work is not validated in any way.
Right.
And then inoculation, for a phantom virus. Of course, back then, viruses later became called filterable bacteria because they would basically purify it and then run it through very fine meshes to hold back any larger particulates. But what was coming through, based upon their idea, not knowing about nanoparticulates, was coming through these poisons. And that's what the word virus means in Latin. The word virus, viros, means poison.
Okay, so this is good, because this is what I was getting to. I wanted you to make the distinction, again, in stupid, simple English. What is the distinction between a germ and a virus?
The germ can be micro or it can be nano. Okay, so we're talking about a millionth of a meter to a billionth of a meter. So these are very small particulates, and you have to use light microscopes or compound microscopes or electron microscopes to see the nanoparticulates, because they're basically invisible to the natural eye.
What are they seeking to do? What is the germ seeking to do?
Well, this is where I love the words of Antoine Béchamp when he said, "Nothing is the prey of death. Everything is the prey of life, of what can be consumed or ingested." So when you're talking about, and that's why his work was so critically important, and then, walking or standing on his shoulders to be able to validate the efficacy of his discoveries, not theory, his discoveries that are recorded in the blood, the third anatomical element. The question is, what is the third anatomical element? God described it as from dust you are and from dust you will return. Mm-hmm. When a body is consumed or cremated, there is this indestructible matter which cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. Béchamp discovered that. I discovered that in the blood of the ancients from the catacombs of Egypt.
Interesting.
Being given some of the anatomical elements of those who have passed and reconstituting them back to life.
Yes.
Okay? Béchamp had already done that. I had to prove it out. I was proving it out by just taking, the blood. 10 years old, 1,000 years old, 3,000 years old, reconstituting that and watching life come again, life resurrected. Right. You see, we never die. We just change our form and function. Mm-hmm. And so when we're looking at bacteria or microparticulates or nanoparticulates, viruses not being a germ, but being the waste of cellular breakdown. So viruses are different because the things that are being tested right now, using the RT-PCR tests, okay, they're testing a fragment of degenerative matter that's coming from either human, plant, or animal. Now you can breathe that in, or you can eat it.
Yes, yes.
So if you're eating an egg, that has 38,700,000 pathological microorganisms, and I say pathological only in the sense that you're literally, when you eat an egg, you're putting in the anatomical elements of that egg.
Yeah.
That egg, when it's broken down, the particulates, the matter, the microzyma, which is indestructible, goes into your bloodstream, and it activates the white blood cells to say, we have, a storm here. There's pollutants, and we need to clean it up. And the ones that have been assigned to that are called neutrophils. It makes up 60% of your white blood count. And they go around, and I watch them. I've watched them for 40 years. They don't attack. They're like vacuum cleaners. They take them into their body, literally sacrificing their lives to maintain internal cleanliness of the internal environment. But the egg microzyma, okay, which is indestructible, which has its intelligence that comes from its parents, okay, of a life of the chicken. So Béchamp said, he said, when you eat the flesh or blood of another animal, you take on that intelligence or those anatomical elements of which are not destructible, they're eternal, that contains their knowledge, their experience, not only from themselves, but those of their progenitors. We are a sum total of the information that's impregnated on the anatomical elements that make up an egg and make up a sperm. When they come together, a spark of life is created and a drop of blood is formed. Out of that drop of blood, every other body cell is created. So with the work of Antoine Béchamp, who is a predecessor of mine, and then having the opportunity to study under Dr. Marie Blecker in Essen, Germany, Essex, Germany, there I learned the work of Dr. Gunther Enderlin.
Yes.
And Dr. Gunther Enderlin, a German who embraced Antoine Béchamp's work and basically discovered the same thing that Béchamp did.
That's right.
Béchamp called it the microzyma. Gunther Enderlin called it the proteid. And then Dr. Livingston called it the cryptocide. God called it dust. From dust you are, and indeed, from dust you will return.
Indeed.
So I don't know if so it specifically to your question about Louis Pasteur.
Well, no, the question, Robert, is more, again, in the most reductive sense, what is the distinction between a germ and a virus? Because most people think it's very much the same thing.
Okay, a germ has genetic matter. Viruses do not. Viruses are poison. Viruses are liquid waste, kind of like when you urinate.
Yeah.
That's liquid waste. Not to be confused by some of the particulates that are in there that have genetic matter.
Then how does it work that an Ayurvedic doctor and some of the greatest in the world will drink their own urine and recommend that we drink urine as a Vedic treatment?
Well, I guess if you're thirsty and you don't have any other better source of water, it's not going to help maintain the alkaline design of the body fluids. The whole idea about drinking your urine, theoretically, most people would have urine that's in the 5.5 to 6.5. That doesn't restore the alkaline design of the fluids, and therefore I don't recommend that.
Right.
If you're in the desert and there's no water around, and you end up having to drink your own urine just to recycle things. Yeah, that's a possibility. But The only thing I could say about that would make any sense to me as it relates to drinking your own urine would be that you're restoring some of the anatomical elements that have broken down the microzymas from your own cells. You're restoring those back so they can be regenerated again. Right. And so that would take place in the crypts of the small intestine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, someone here is saying that you have to, Alexandra is saying that you have to detox before you drink your urine, before any benefit can come. Anyway, I thought that was a curious one. What is the distinction between flu and a cold? The flu and the cold?
Well, they're all terrain problems. The flu and the cold is nothing more than the body's expulsion of acidic waste, whether it be metabolic, like lactic acid, whether it be respiratory, like carbon dioxide, whether it be, let's say, environmental, which may be titanium dioxide or hydrogen arsenic or carbon monoxide. Maybe it's dietary, which may be a compound or chemical such as glyphosate. These chemicals that they use in farming they're in pesticides or herbicides or insecticides, but these are poisonous chemicals that end up in our food. So here again, the idea is to manage and maintain, which is one of my foundational theories, manage and maintain the alkaline design of the internal fluids. And the key to longevity is purity. It's cleanliness.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So someone here is asking you a question, Robert. It's on the screen there. It says, Dr. Robert, I'd never vaxxed, but why do you think the COVID vax contains mRNA as opposed to all the others, which contain a small amount of the live or dead virus?
Well, that's here again, the live and dead virus. We're going back to definition. Viruses are poisons. It's kind of like what is worse, the bite of the snake or is the venom of the snake? What kills is the poison. Okay, and you can't inject for health. It just doesn't work.
Right.
And it is so unnatural to think that you can inoculate and put in a toxin. So that's using disease or dis-ease to treat dis-ease. So when we understand flu and colds as an expulsion of acidic waste by inoculating, by inputting micro or nanoparticulates, by the way, the so-called vaccinations for the COVID are not vaccinations at all. It's gene therapy.
Yes, gene therapy.
And gene therapy is not a vaccination, and therefore the companies that are producing this in the U.S. do not have protection as it relates to harm that they may be doing through that vaccination. And it's not a vaccination, it's an inoculation. But the idea that you can put in a poison and then develop some sort of immunity by creating an antibody against that particular poison is total nonsense.
Yes, indeed. And in much the same way that wearing a mask is an absolute bloody nonsense. And that's the question Dan Mandela's asking you on the screen there. So whilst we're on that subject and seeing it, what about wearing a mask? Well, I think you'll find that Dr. Young was one of the first people telling us that it's an absolute nonsense. But in what circumstances, Robert, would you, as a doctor, as a medical practitioner, ever wear a mask? Under what circumstance?
Well, when I have to wear a mask going into public areas, I wear them.
I mean, professionally, in what all you know about science, when would you find it necessary?
If I'm being exposed to mustard gas, if I'm being exposed to some sort of chemical in the air that could seriously injure or intoxicate my interstitial fluids of the lung or damage the alveoli.
Yes.
So I would wear that mask. The mask, like the N95, if you look under a microscope at high magnification, they have gaping holes within their fabric that would allow any nanoparticulate to come in. So if we're talking about titanium dioxide, which is a very toxic chemical, or we're talking about black carbon monoxide.
Yes.
It's very difficult for these masks to filtrate out that. What happens when you wear a mask is you reduce the exhalation of about 15% of the carbon dioxide is then held back in to the alveoli, and this carbon monoxide can cause pathological blood coagulation, which then leads to oxygen deprivation and carbon dioxide poisoning. So wearing the mask does more harm than good.
Right. So there we go. So wearing a mask is a syndicated exercise globally with governments and public health administration services and officials enforcing ill health upon the population of the world. Simply put, that's all it's doing.
Yeah, the same thing with staying indoors. You have 2 to 5 times more toxicity inside your house than outside. Right. So by quarantining you inside and then, wearing the mask outside, you literally compound the amount of filtrates, nanoparticulates that the lungs just can't deal with. And so these are contributing factors to SARS.
Okay, let's drill into this. So for people out there who are all, common sense tells us that this notion of masking is absurd. We've been talking about it for a year now, Robert. People are being coerced by governments under threat of penalty and imprisonment in some cases, of making themselves and their children ill by masking, depriving themselves of oxygen. This is a criminal offense, folks. I'm speaking to the audience here. This is a crime against humanity. This is a crime being enacted against you by all the officialdom in your government and the government itself. I honestly recommend you never wear a mask and that you challenge every official along the way and take them to court. And if you need Dr. Robert Young's support and mine, I'm sure I can speak on your behalf, Robert. We'd happily make an appearance in any courtroom, virtually, and inform the judge and inform any tribunal, inform any jury of the facts as it relates to wearing masks. But look, this is just symptomatic of how cocked up we've become civilizationally. It's what I've been speaking to for many years, Robert. This whole notion of government itself is the grotesquerie. It's the fiction. The government has we have no place for governments any longer in the world. They do not serve the living. They serve the dead. They serve the fiction. And curiously enough, with what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. in the last week, with the removal essentially of the constitutional republic to Mar-a-Lago golf course, and Biden and his little sock puppet brigade living effectively in a hollow ship, the White House cast adrift in Washington, D.C., designated effectively as a foreign invader, now under military occupation by the good military brass, but a hollow ship, a corporation, a dead fiction, which is regarded as a foreign invader. So we're seeing an end in the coming weeks and months. We will see a complete cessation of the fictitious corporation governments. They're all in foreclosure, in point of fact. And I'll be talking a great deal more about this in the coming weeks on broadcasts. But it's interesting, Robert, that, it just comes down to that being masked or unmasked, being in your reason, in your Christed light or not. And that's really the great boon that's come out of this COVID era fantasy. Robert, why are so many people dying, apparently, from COVID-19?
Well, if you look at the numbers, the World Health Organization numbers, as it relates to what you need to focus on here is excess deaths. So if you're looking at excess deaths that have been published, and I have them on my scientific blog, where I've actually have the quantitative information, both my own and also that of the CDC, you will see going back even to 2010, I've got the numbers for 210, 11, 12, 13, all the way to 220. But just let's look at 220, 219, and 218. There's no increase in mortality, excess deaths over and above 19 or 18, and only slightly above in some of these other years. So there's no indication that there is an increase in mortality or death due to a so-called phantom pandemic. Now, once you look at the hard numbers, it's evident that if you look a lot closer, it's called PIC, where they've actually combined pneumonia, influenza, and COVID all together in order to keep the illusion that this is causing, this pandemic is real. But the evidence is, even when you combine these numbers, what happens is the flu or influenza disappears. What happened to influenza in 2020? It disappeared.
Right.
Why did it disappear? Because those deaths became part of the COVID deaths in order to inflate them to justify this pandemic. And getting back to the mask, here again we have the duality of life being expressed. The duality is you wear it, obedient. You don't wear it, disobedient. This is mass mind control, population control. And the purpose of this is to find out how many sheep are out there that are actually going to abide, by this non-scientific, illusionary protection, when if you look under a light microscope, compound microscope, you can see the openings within these masks that are so large that it will allow many micro particulates and nanoparticulates in. So the masquerade is to determine for these bad actors, these Luciferians, that they can literally dominate and control the population, because that is what they fear.
Right, well stated. That it's as simple as that. So there you have it, folks. Pay no attention to Luciferians. Don't do anything in this world that offends your soul. Always stand in your Christed nature. Always stay within the remit of your conscience. Never transgress that conscience under any circumstances. Certainly not because of fear reflexivity. No, one must be very, very careful and mindful that you never make a decision or a determination in this world which is predicated on fear reflexivity, because one thing is certain, that if you do that, you're taking a left fork in the road. It is wrong action, and it will lead to compounded wrong action, and that will lead to disease, that will lead to entropy and negative outcomes. I mean, it's very, very simple stuff. Robert, more questions here. Do germs or viruses cause disease? Yes or no?
No. No, they are the symptoms of cellular breakdown, yes.
What are the, okay, repeat that?
Germs are the breakdown products, the symptoms, the genetic fragments of cellular breakdown due to an acidic, toxic environment.
Right, okay. But they do not cause disease.
Not in and of themselves. They can contribute to states of imbalance. Just like taking seeds and throwing them in soil, they grow perfectly well. If you throw them on concrete, they don't. It's all about the milieu. It's all about, okay, if there is toxins in the air, can they cause injury? The answer is they can contribute to a state of imbalance, which can then lead to a polluted environment, which can then lead to cellular breakdown and the release of exotoxins, mycotoxins, endotoxins.
In the way that pollen on a summer's day can lead to sneezing. I mean, it's right.
Pollen can be taken in, creating an imbalance in the terrain, activate the white blood cells to clean up those particulates, to remove them out of the body, because the ideal condition of the body fluids have to be pristine, have to be clean. When you're clean, you're never mean. When you're clean, you're lean and you're serene. It's when you're clean on the inside, as the good book has said, cleanliness is next to godliness. And so we have godlike people telling those who are following their God, however you define that.
Yeah.
For me, it may be different than others, but doing godly or living godly is living righteously, and doing right by people,
Very good. Let's move on. Anthony Fauci, the most powerful public health administrator on the face of the earth. I think it's safe to say, Robert, that he's the most powerful public health administrator in history, because we've never, ever had an individual have so much concentration of power in their hands, where the CDC and the NIH can issue an edict. They can make it up. They can pull it out of their proverbial ass. They can make it up on the spot, which they do, and they can set forth agendas, depopulation agendas, eugenics agendas, cultural, social, economics, engineering agendas. They can play God effectively from that position of concentrated power. Anthony Fauci, for half a century, has been in that position, more or less, of power. How did someone like that slither into the mainframe? And what powers are there out there that keep that salamander in play for 50 years?
Once it's obedience to the Luciferians, because Robert Gallo and Luc Montagnier are no longer with us. So Fauci took over the NIH from Robert Gallo when he was thrown out by the bad actors, by the Luciferians,
right,
for nonconformity. The same thing happened to Luc Montagnier. Those two received the Nobel Prize together for their discovery of the HIV virus, which they never did. They never isolated. Now, if you read any of the research about where there's claims of isolation, purification and isolation of a specific virus, you'll find that as you read in the body of the paper, you'll read the words change from isolation to isolate. And there's a very distinct, important point that needs to be made. And isolate is a fraction of something, which may be. So this is why I say in my writings that HIV, that corona, that Zika, that Ebola, that the SARS virus, that these viruses only exist on a piece of paper. They're literally created at one's imagination, taking a fraction of information and then guesstimating what that really is.
Okay.
But there's no way to really know, because even the Nobel Prize winner, Gary Mullis, says you cannot identify any specific qualify any specific virus through a PCR test.
Right.
Now, isn't it interesting that somehow he ends up dead in 2019 before all this nonsense started?
Remarkable.
He was a voice of reason, saying, "Wake up, people! These positive corona tests are positive for what? There's no way to determine that." So the answer to your question is Luc Montagnier lost his position at the University of Paris, was then ended up at Dubai at Tsinghua University in China, and now he's repented, and now he's back again. Fauci, after Robert Gallo was convicted of scientific fraud and lost his position, they needed to find another bad actor to follow the bad actor that got caught.
Yes.
And so he's all over the place.
Okay.
But if you tie him down in a debate as it relates to an isolate and an isolation, he has to admit, if he's being honest and truthful.
He's not capable of honesty or truthfulness, but do go on.
So he's going to have to kind of wrap around this answer to this question, have you isolated in its completeness the HIV virus, the Ebola virus, the SARS virus?
The answer is no, right?
The answer is no.
Right. Okay. Well, we have 1,000 people more or less here have joined us. So we're sitting in a lovely, cozy virtual theater, Robert, with 1,000 good fellows around us, all projecting their plasma, their hearts and their minds into this noble inquiry. And I thank you. Thank you for being with me. We've got some while to go yet. We're coming up to the top of the hour, but if it's good with you, Robert, we're going to keep going. COVID-19.
My honor and my pleasure.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. COVID-19. Again, for those folks, another 300 or 400 have joined us since I spoke. Asked, what is COVID-19 in 2 or 3 sentences, no more, so that people can take it away tomorrow to the office and relay this to others. What is COVID-19?
COVID-19 is the latest. It's the coronavirus 2019, which is related to COVID-2, which dates back to 2003. That it was originally researched in the 60s. So they associate it with the cold and the flu. There's different types of proteins which they've taken looked at a particulate, and these particulates here again have been related to symptoms of influenza or the cold. Okay. And these are nothing more but symptoms, but specifically the acronym SARS, so that all of you understand, is an acronym that stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. Now, anytime a scientist or researcher puts the word syndrome on the back of something, it means that we really don't know what we're talking about.
But isn't that the same as pneumonia, what you've just described?
Pneumonia is a yeast infection of the lungs.
Okay. What are the major contributing factors to acute or chronic lung disease?
It's the main one, and Dr. Galina Migalka and I published on this on COVID-2, actually SARS, severe acute respiratory disorder, where we actually map out the pathology as beginning with cellular deterioration of the membrane, and the major contributing factors today in 2020 are chemical poisoning and 2.5 gigahertz, which is basically generation 4 EMF Wi-Fi, which is the same frequency of what you microwave in your oven. So electromagnetic frequencies and chemical poisoning are the 2 major contributors, which causes pathological blood coagulation.
Stop there. A chemical poison, by distinction, is a synthetic molecule, correct?
Well, it can be. It can be natural too. So lactic acid is a chemical poisoning that makes our muscles sore. Okay, that's a metabolic poison. Glyphosate is a chemical poisoning, which is in our foods, if it's not organic, that can poison, that leads to a cancerous condition, neurological conditions, birth defects, such as the Zika virus is caused by glyphosate, which is chemical poisoning. HIV is caused by chemical drugs or synthetic drugs or recreational drugs. And one of the main causes of death, or which took us from, let's say, a non-condition to a immune deficiency, or what is called acquired immune deficiency, chemical poisoning due to AZT poisoning or other toxic drugs, which leads to the systemic poisoning of the body, which throws the body in pathological blood coagulation, which leads to oxygen deprivation and the death, and basically you die from lack of oxygen.
Okay. 3 things, Robert. 3 things that people should do to prevent a disease decay or to mitigate disease decay and death.
Well, going back to Antoine Béchamp and my work in the microzyma, which is defined by the by a living, indestructible anatomical element which makes up all living plant, animal, or human matter. DNA is not living. DNA or genetic matter, even the cell is not living. It's what makes up that cell. It's the microzyma, it's the protein, it's the progenitor cryptoside. We have to maintain integrity. So I bring you to the work of Alexis Carrel, who received a posthumous Nobel Prize in the 60s for discovering eternal life.
Yep.
And what he discovered was he was able to keep a heart alive for 20 years, beating, cells dividing, and the heart growing. He'd actually shave it off by changing the environment and removing the acidic waste from that cellular metabolism,
right,
and restoring the alkaline design of the fluids. He was doing this in the 90s. He received a Nobel Prize for his discovery to how to maintain the integrity of cells and then organs, okay, for human transplant. So by maintaining that, you can do the same thing for yourself. So how do you maintain the integrity of the environment? That's it. Not treat any specific disease, because there are no specific diseases. All diseases are symptoms of an underlying polluted environment, which the white blood cells are trying to help maintain and clean up. So you can do that with what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, what you think, what you feel, and what you believe. That's the only sickness and disease. The treatment then is managing that internal environment with an alkaline lifestyle and diet. So it's not drinking your urine, it's drinking high pH electron-rich water, because our bodies are electric, and drinking purified water, which has a pH of at least 10, that has an electrical potential of at least negative 450 millivolts, ideally to 850 millivolts.
Okay, don't get too scientific on this crowd, or they'll peel off. What is Kangen water good for you, Robert?
Water is a machine that provides alkalinity and supports the white blood cells with more electron activity to help neutralize the acids that cause disease. So yes.
Okay. So Kangen water is good water?
Yes.
Great. Kitchen chemistry. What anyone can do of any income to mitigate disease starting tomorrow and to begin to boost immune system. Three things.
Once you understand the stomach's major chemical production is sodium bicarbonate. And it does that to manage and maintain the alkaline design. So what is sodium bicarbonate? It's NaHCO3. What is NaHCO3? It's baking soda. So you can take some baking soda that's aluminum free, put a couple of teaspoons in a small glass of purified or distilled water, and drink that in the morning and before going to bed. It's that simple. And then the other thing you can do, the second thing, is you need to test your urine and make sure your urine pH is at least 7.8 or greater. Ideally, for continuing life expectancy and quality of life, the urine pH should be at a pH of 8.4. If it's less than 7.8, then you take the distilled or the Kangen or purified water, you take a couple of teaspoons of the baking soda, put it in water, and you drink it to literally support the stomach in its design as an organ of contribution to contribute sodium bicarbonate to maintain the alkaline design of not only the vascular fluids, but the interstitial fluids and the intercellular fluids.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, was that three things?
No, that was two.
That was two.
The third thing is a combination of what you eat and what we talked about, what you drink, but what you eat. You need to move away from animal particulates, nano and micro. This creates difficulty for the blood and for maintaining alkalinity. So you've got to move away from chicken, pork, fish, and move more to a plant-based, alkaline lifestyle and diet that can support the alkaline design of your body fluids that will support cleanliness from within.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, Robert. Thank you. I can see the comments here. Got well over 1,000 people, 1,100 people with us. A lot of people very grateful for this, again, stupid, simple approach to understanding medical science. You know, Robert, how did it get to this point where 90+% of doctors and doctoring is complete inversion of healing and treating? How did it get to that?
Well, look, you know, when you have a superstar like Hank Aaron, who was a super baseball player, you know, and he receives I don't even want to call it a vaccination because it's not. He
gets a medical device put into his body.
Well, it's an inoculation of chemical poisoning, which can only prove one thing: you're either going to survive it or you're going to die. Yeah. Okay, well, he had the inoculation and he's now dead. And it's unfortunate, such a hero like him, such an icon. And the reason he did it was as for an example to the world that, hey, I'm this great athlete. Yes, I'm 86 years old. And yes, I've got great health. And then 2 weeks later, he's dead. You see, remember this. The number is 21%. 21%. Two numbers, 21 and 99.9.5%. The 21% is the inoculation will injure or kill 21% of the people that receive it. And that's a low estimation. The 99.9.95% is your risk for pathological blood coagulation, even if you're wearing a mask, even if you are indoors, even if you have an acidic lifestyle and diet. You have a 99.95% of not contracting, but expressing the symptoms of COVID. And what is COVID? It's nothing more than the cellular membrane breakdown of the cell due to a polluted chemical or energy field from electromagnetic field radiation from chemical or radiation poisoning. Those are the two.
Let's bring 5G in here now, because this is becoming something very pressing. As we all know, during this COVID lull, 5G has rolled out a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructural rollout. Anyone who wants to brush up and learn about it, see the film I made almost 2 years ago, 5G Apocalypse, the extinction event, which was very, very predictive and prescient of exactly what we're living through right now, much in the same way that the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Weaponization of the Biosphere that I moderated with Robert Young and the International Tribunal almost 2 years ago was predictive and prescient on what is happening today. We've been on it for some time. We've known about the existential threats. We've been speaking to the existential threats. Of course, nobody bloody pays attention until it becomes a calamity, which it is now. 5G is rolling out by best accounts. I personally believe that the Pentagon and good hats have already begun the process of overriding the weaponized frequencies, so to speak. But let's just speak briefly about 5G and the likely impact of what the extant 5G spectrum is likely to do to all living systems, but principally the human. What are we looking at in the next few years?
Okay, well, first off, we've been measuring this. I have not at this time been able to measure anything above 8.4 gigahertz of pulsating vibrational frequencies. Most of the frequencies that we're running on right now with Wi-Fi and with our our cell phones is running about between 800 megahertz to 2.4 gigahertz, and then I'm also seeing with those who have 5G that you'll see up in the 8s. So we have yet to experience 30 gigahertz, let alone the capability of these satellites. There's over 20,000 of them that have the capacity to direct once you've received the vaccination, once you've had the PCR test, and they've actually coated your cranium with the nanoparticulars of aluminum oxide. Once you light up, once you receive the what is called technatrium N99, which is in these concoctions, okay, when they can light you up, then you can be targeted personally with these higher frequencies. I have not measured any of these higher frequencies, but even at 2.4 and even at 8.4, these frequencies destroy the hemoglobin of the blood. And when you destroy the hemoglobin, you just lost the ability to remove carbon dioxide and to pick up life-saving oxygen for your body. And it will take you out. So you can do that. You can do that with 2.4 gigahertz. So when they talk about the first wave, the second wave, or the third wave, they are literally, not figuratively, they are literally speaking about electromagnetic frequency pulsating waves that can be delivered to a group for crowd dispersing or delivered to a disobedient person. They can literally target you, especially once they put these nanoparticulates, which are not, they're transhuman. They're not vaccines. They're gene therapy, but they contain specific chemicals that will light you up. There's no reason for technatrium to be in that vaccine other than to light you up. They use it in scans, PET scans. They use it to light up cancerous areas. This is a radioactive isotope. They light you up. And when you're lit up, you are a friggin' target.
You're a target. And 5G is a target acquiring weapon system, locked and loaded planetarily. And once that sky net or the kill grid goes active with the sky net, as Robert was alluding to, it doesn't matter if you're at the bottom of the Indian Ocean or on the top of the Himalayas. They will be able to see you. They will be able to triangulate you. And they are an insidious bunch of luciferic interests. I lecture on this at great length. Anyone who knows my work knows I'll beat anyone to death with any argument coming from any angle on this subject. Talk conspiracy theoretics to us and we'll beat you with a stick. This is conspiracy. It is grotesque conspiracy, and it's being apprehended this year by the kind of consciousness that we're engendering right here in this conversation. Please, 1,200 people plus joining us now. You're very welcome. Thanks for keeping on coming. Share this link now. We're going to keep going for a while. Are you good for a while yet, Robert?
I am. Can I also just say one other thing, because this is not my first rodeo, since we love all those people from Texas, right? This is not my first, and Utah and all the Western states, but in 1998, I was in London, England, and I worked in conjunction with a company called Quantum Link or Q-Link, and they hired me as an expert to do a double-blind study. And I worked in conjunction with another doctor. Her name is Beverly Rubik. You can look her up. She was at that time a PhD professor at the University of California, Berkeley. And we published a paper in 2001 on what we found in 1999 and 1998, dealing with just these lower frequencies, not the gigahertz frequencies, but the megahertz frequencies. And BBC worked with us on this project, and we did a double-blinded study on this, and you can read it. I've put it at the drdrobertyoung.com. It's the effects of electromagnetic fields on the human biofield. Now we're talking about a study I did 23 years ago. Okay. They would never. In fact, I even have the news release on this that was which was one of the nightly news things on BBC. It's on my YouTube. You can watch it. I talk about it. But But even at these lower frequencies, okay, these pulsating frequencies damaged the human cell and caused the corona effect to appear on the membranes. Once we had some sort of protection shield and protecting our vibrational frequencies, this biofield, which is being...
You talking about a Tesla shield?
We tested the shield. We tested the shield. I'm wearing the shield. And I have no affiliation with this company. We tested the shield. The shield has crystal in the center, surrounded by 150 feet of copper wire. Why did we do this? We studied this at Stanford. The reason we did this is because crystals absorb energy and that vibration and then feed it back. So if you wear this at your heart chakra, it vibrates with your own body frequency, and it amplifies it by the 150 feet of coil of the copper and makes it three-dimensional. And in doing that, you can protect your own healthy vibrational frequency. And we proved that in 1998. We published it in 2001, and nobody's even heard about it.
Right.
Okay. So it was a historic breakthrough to determine the effects of electromagnetic frequencies on the human cell, the body cells, and the blood cells, and how you can protect yourself simply by using what is called SRT, sympathetic resonance technology. You have to protect yourself. The only way you can protect yourself is by protecting that internal vibration and amplifying that vibration, so any incoming toxic biofield that you're exposed to cannot have an effect on you.
Let's just drill into this, Robert, and for a couple of minutes, take the conversation into what I would loosely refer to as hyperdimensional physics. So there is also this alpha omega state, which is, the Christed state or nature or vibral light, when a human being is standing in alignment with the divine principle. In simple terms, it actualization occurs. That alignment or phase conjugation with the divine Godhead, which is what all of us children of God, sons and daughters of God, are ultimately mandated as capacitors of the divine into this temporal realm. That is what we are meant to ultimately fulfill, that mandate. And then as capacitors of that divine vibral light, Christed nature, supernature, we're meant ultimately to extend or expand that radiance into the temporal field and lateral plane. The principle of absolution and redemption then becomes a seminal aspect of the Christed nature. Now, I know from hard personal experience that standing inside that Christed nature and being very conscious of that being and that doing is in and of itself a means and a measure by which you create a very, very different fractal harmonic. And essentially we are that crystal and that copper coil, correct? When we're in a conscious, actualized state.
Yes, and that harmonics is amplified by the crystals.
Yes.
And these are living crystals. Dr. Harry Oldfield, he's actually taken photographs of the living beings, light beings, that live in and around these crystals.
Yeah.
So I saw them. I couldn't believe them. But they interact with your own light. I mean, I love what you said, Sasha. I mean, I honestly believe we're God in embryos, and we have that light within us. And biologically, since we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not physical beings having a spiritual experience, that when we literally keep that connection together, being a light being colloidalized to a physical being as one unit, the element that holds us together is called soul. Soul in Greek means salt.
Yes.
The soul is a colloidal connection between that which is light and that which is physical, being held together by salt.
Lovely.
By eliminating salt out of your diet, you're literally disconnecting to your soul.
Yeah.
You're disconnecting the soul that will release the spirit body, which inhabits the physicality.
Very good.
So hold that together. You need salt in your diet. For a 70-kilo person, you need between 13 to 15 grams a day of whole, non-processed or unprocessed saline or sodium. And I even suggest something even up towards a 30% solution to deal with the pollution, to dilute that pollution in your solutions. And so salt becomes the major element of life. And this is where a new science, a new physics, a new chemistry, where I've actually converted the table, the periodic table, into an inverted pyramid, to where it goes this way, and from here, which is sodium, which connects the soul, all other elements are created. And it's mathematical. I've written all the mathematical equations, to validate the efficacy of this process, that I call nuclear transformation. Not biological, but nuclear transformation, where sodium becomes calcium. Where sodium.
Don't go too scientific on us. Don't go too scientific on us here. Forgive me. I love this. I want to drill into some of the stuff at some point, but I just right now.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to just chunk into these very reductive questions for people like myself. Okay, look, we got a lot of people commenting here, and a lot more countries coming on board. So numbers are jumping up all the time. Let's just talk very briefly, if you don't mind. Again, yes or no? Do vaccines protect me from getting sick?
Well, does the inoculation protect you? Absolutely not, because it's laden with nano and microbiologicals, transhuman, in a hydrogel, which will solidify your organs, in chemicals that will light you up, such as technatrium 99N and aluminum oxide. They are poison.
Okay. Will that PCR test be depositing nanoparticulates into the skull tissue?
Here again, if you're using the PCR, at the tip of that are nanoparticulates as they push that up to the cranium, which is porous, to actually get those nanoparticulates, which will pass into the brain tissue.
Okay.
An
absolute no-no. You do not permit that PCR test to go up your nasal cavity.
PCR test is an inoculation.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Right. For those people who've had it, Roberts, what do they do from here?
Don't do it again. I mean, yeah, don't do it again, please. Please don't do it again. I mean, all you're doing is putting more poison into you're polluting your environment and setting yourself up, to be lit up. But it's part of the bad Luciferians' control mechanism. This is why they want to mandate vaccines across the world, because it's not a vaccine.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Bad dream. Bullshit. Not going to happen. Infrared saunas. Any good for health?
Infrared sauna has a frequency. The wavelength of that is 940 nanometers, which permeates the skin into the soft tissue to the bone. And what it does is it activates the circulation, both blood and lymphatic system, to open up the pores of the skin to allow some of these poisonous toxins that we're breathing, that we're eating, that we're drinking, and then if those who have been inoculated are literally being put into the interstitial and vascular fluids, it helps to bring this out, to restore purity and alkalinity to the body fluids. So it is a good thing. Okay, very good. Natasha asking, anyone else from Zimbabwe here? The answer would be yes, sitting in front of you. What is the scientific method for determining the existence of a germ? Because people think that the PCR test is a scientific
method for determining the existence of a germ.
Okay, the PCR test doesn't determine anything other than there's some genetic matter which may be fragmented from a cell of your own body or from the chicken you just ate last night. Okay, it doesn't differentiate. Okay, so it's useless. All tests are false. Okay.
Okay, very good. Why don't more people know about your work, Robert? I mean, I have to say, I don't agree with that question, because I think that a great many people do know about your work. I think you're becoming more famous than infamous. Everyone knows that you're an absolute Trojan and that you have dragged yourself through the valley of death in your profession, and you're an absolute man of God. I think everyone recognizes you as a hero these days. A lot of scurrilous people have tried to paint every one of us in the vanguard of the truth and disclosure movement. But you're a popular hero to so many people. But why do you think more people don't know about not just you, but folks like you who've been at the vanguard of real medicine, real science?
Do you see my eyes?
I do.
There's tears in my eyes. The reason there's tears in my eyes because I cry for humanity. And this is my suffering. Because I just want people to know the truth, because I know this truth will set them free.
Yes.
And I know that it's hard. I mean, when we think about Moses, who took out 500,000 people out of Egypt, it grew to 1 million people.
Yes.
These people wandered and died in the wilderness because they would not hear his voice.
Yes, they did.
They need to listen to you, Sasha. They need to listen to truth. They need to understand that there are a few powerful, controlling Luciferians that want to control the human race and reduce the human race down to what they feel is tolerable. They want to be God. They are not gods.
They've been living vicariously through the human family for millennia. They've been broadcasting through the linguistic wave genetics from far-flung constellations, Draco constellations, Zeta Reticulans, the Orions. I mean, God knows we are a cosmic soup. We are the galactic hybrid, you and I, Robert. The difference is we are also the Adamite. We are also the sons and the daughters of God. And we're the ones who take it from here. So we're the ones who are saying, it's been a fun game, this hybridization program, this strange galactic story. We take it from here, and we're stepping into that divine nature. Almost certainly we can see it. We can see the tonality and the vibral nature of light itself is changing to those of us who have the sensitivity to see it, to see these things. I'm filled with enormous, not hope. I despise the notion, much less the word hope, but I have a tremendous sense of early onset euphoria. I describe it like that, Robert, and that's because for the 22 years that I've been committed 8 days a week in pure inquiry, I'm seeing now that sea change, that groundswell. I feel it. I feel it in my bones, in the marrow of my bones. I've never felt so good and so alive. I call it early onset euphoria. Surely you also feel now that not only are we on the right side of history, but that the tribe has already crossed that proverbial Red Sea. We are already more or less on dry sand.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I mean, I am distracted by some of the persecution that's been thrown at myself and others. Even my own medical director of my clinic was taken out a year and a half ago because of telling the truth. Others have lost their lives for this. I am 100% sane. My passion is to awaken humanity to the truth.
Yes.
I am very, very blessed, not in the worldly things, but in those things which really matter most.
Yes.
And those are the godly things. So I'm very grateful that God has trusted me with with the light that he's given me, that I might share it. And I can't help myself but to share it as a warning voice, as an admonition, and encourage people to walk in faith. And faith is an acronym. It stands for first attribute in thinking healthy. So when we have faith and we begin to live in the present and be grateful with gratitude, and then to share this great knowledge that we've been given, Sasha's been given, indeed, and others like him, to share this light of truth. This is what makes us free, and this is what takes away this fear. Fear is an acronym that stands for false evidence appearing real. The things that we fear are things that are illusion. They're things that are not going to happen, but they create a tremendous amount of toxicity from within. These thoughts that we have, we need to move then to more positive thinking, to faithful approaches, realizing this, that wherever you are in this world, we are brothers and we are sisters. We are the daughters, sons and daughters of a living, real God who loves and cares about us. And he has not abandoned us, that he is allowing these Luciferians for us to learn and to grow in this duality of life, that we might learn by our experience. How would we ever know evil if we never experienced it? We would not be able to differentiate between what is right, what is good, what is true. We now have been given both. There is such a distinction between black and white. There is a distinction between evil and good. There is no gray area anymore. We know specifically those who are the Luciferians. We know the good players, the righteous people of this planet, who have the right heart that's connected to their spirit. But these people that are acting this way, there are brothers and sisters too. They've just lost their way.
Thank you, Robert, for reminding us. And that was what I was mentioning earlier about redemption and absolution must become the signature and the hallmark of our noble expression, our noble journey now as a collective, as well as individually. Each one of us are having to reconcile all sorts of weirdness in the family unit, in the local community. Friendships have been breaking up, relationships have been breaking up because of this disparity that has emerged in the last year between the masked and the unmasked, between people who think that government is here to save them, and Fauci and Gates are amazing philanthropic creatures, and those who know that we're dealing with the devil incarnate, and who know that we're dealing with the end of evil empire and a Luciferic age, the fallen light of Atlantis, which we must now consciously actualize ourselves within this thrall, this dream spell, this weirdness that we've been traversing in the last year. But it is the actualized human that is able to now break that spell and move into our own graduation and evolution in that sense. So here we are. It is my contention that, and I've had this validated by a number of key pundits. I'm going to be doing a broadcast very shortly with Robert David Steele, Simon Parks, Sean Stone, and Charlie Ward, and we're going to be drilling into this. But it is my contention that over 80% of America did not vote for the man who is posturing now as being the CEO, the commander-in-chief of a hollow vessel, a vessel which is under military occupation and is effectively a foreign invader on the sacred soil of the North American plains. So that's where we're at right now. Dr. Robert Young, you are a hero amongst men, in my view, in the view of many millions of people. I think what we're going to need to do, Robert, is come back again in a couple of weeks' time, if that can suit you, because I know, judging by what I'm seeing on the threads here, we have 1,300 thereabouts people just on this link here. We're looking in on this feed. It may be a great many more people, and certainly by tomorrow it'll be tens of thousands. Look, we're having an impact. People are feeling this conversation. People are feeling truth and disclosure and revelation, because it is revelation. The tribulation is drawing to an end. I'm certain of that in my own mind. I've always regarded myself as one of the greatest barometers of that in this world, whilst I've been here as a steward, a custodian of this stuff. And so I stand by my sense of things. We're moving beyond the great tribulation and the reckoning into revelation. And we have a very beautiful journey ahead of us as a peoples. But I urge everyone looking in, please do share this far and wide. I promise you, I will coerce, blackmail, bribe, whatever it takes, Robert to come back on within a couple of weeks. And we're going to take this conversation to the next level. Robert, just a little overview here. I'm about to launch a series of symposiums on AI, transhumanism, and Morgellons syndrome. And I'd love to invite you onto that panel, which is going to be, I think every 8 weeks, we're going to be doing another one. We're going to be disclosing, revealing, and showing people things that are so shocking. We have the forensic evidences. We've got the film, the MRI scans, the photographs, the microscopy slides of the most aberrant, demonic, disgusting, and bizarre things that are being birthed through human beings who themselves are being used by very evil agendas, as you well know, nested deeply within compartmentalized elements of the military-industrial complex and the satanic echelons, who have been using humans, millions of humans around the world, as little cauldrons of scientific and eugenics experimentation. Also, remotely interposing genetic influence into human beings, to the extent that some of these humans are birthing living creatures, parasites with faces and teeth and eyeballs, and the most disgusting things are being birthed, self-replicating nanodiodes breaking out of people's skin, out of their eyeballs, giving birth to maggots out of their faces. I mean, the most aberrant demonic forces at work. Now, we've been working with many survivors. Many people have perished to this, and we've got shocking stuff to disclose. But I know, Robert, that you would make such an incredible medical and scientific mind, and I hope that you will consider joining us on these AI, transhumanism, and Morgellons symposia moving forward.
Yeah, it's been part of my research, and I'd be honored to be part of that panel. Absolutely.
Great stuff. People, wow, thank you. 1,300 of you thereabouts. Very, very honored to have had you join us. I will get some of these comments back to Robert. Robert, please, by all means, 2 minutes, any sign off for the audience before we wrap this broadcast.
You know, I just want people to know that you're not alone. And when I say that, I don't mean alone just in the physical world, but in the spirit world. There are an army of angels that are protecting this planet and protecting us, and many of them are your own loved ones. You can sense them, you can feel them. So I know this is really can be emotionally trying for a lot of people, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of confusing messages out there. But I assure you that the more you learn the truth, the more your faith will grow. And as your faith grows, that will instill more hope, but it instills knowledge. And now knowledge is power. And as Moses or as Hosea said, my people perish because of lack of knowledge, of ignorance. And when we understand that the life of the human body is the blood, if we will take care of our blood, if we'll maintain internal cleanliness by what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, what we feel, what we believe, everything in our lifestyle, and manage that and be sensitive to it, we can regain our health. If you're dealing with any sickness or disease, you can restore that body to complete wholeness. And that is not fake hope or unreal expectations. This is real. You can
Indeed.
have it. It's your destiny. It's your birthright to have good health, well-being, and vitality. And so that's my hope and prayer for everyone on this planet.
Indeed. Thank you, Robert. Well, reclamation of health sovereignty is really the first step to claiming sovereignty over our soul, sovereignty over our destiny. Mm-hmm. It has to start with your own health and that of your family and friends and local communities. So let's just make that so. I've certainly commanded that sovereignty in my own life, Robert. And what I learned years ago was that it is about commanding it, giving instruction, commanding it. Human beings, once we become actualized, are immensely powerful. Angels and devils both kneel before an actualized human being. And I think we're on that incredible pivot point now where the collective, the gestalt is awakening. So let's become more aware, consciously aware of this journey that we're all taking, and not be swept along by life, but actually be the ones in the cockpit steering the outcome and steering the highest outcome at that. Dr. Robert Young, thank you so much for joining me. Loved every minute of this. I know it's going to go very viral.
Yeah, love you and love all of our brothers and sisters, wherever you might be. From my heart to your heart, with love.
Indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye, folks. Thanks so much for joining us.